Welcome to my studio. I'm Wendy O'Brien. Thanks for dropping by. Today I will be comparing the use of the Finesse Blending Pen versus odorless mineral spirits for blending colored pencils. So let's jump right in. So this is the Finesse Blender Pen for colored pencil. Blend color, soften edges, smooth texture. It is acid-free and archival, and it has two tips, bold and fine. Let's see, this says, for wax-based colored pencils, for blending and shading, smoothing and unifying, colorless, fast-drying, non-bleeding, low-odor, acid-free, alcohol-based solvent. Clean tips after each use by wiping free of color on clean paper or paper towel. Have several on hand for use with your favorite colors. Conforms to ASTM D-4236. For the OMS, I'll be using the Mona Lisa odorless mineral spirits. So I was really apprehensive about this pen. This is what it looks like. A clear body, easy to hold. This is the brush type tip, and this is the bullet nib type tip, or the fine tip is what they're calling it. So the first thing I need to do is I need to fill in the base colors for the cherries. I will be blending the one on the left with the pen and the one on the right with OMS. When creating the cherries, I try to lay down the exact same amount of pigment on each side, as that would affect the actual comparison. So I try to make sure I put the same amount of layers on each one. Basically, I mirrored the cherries from one to the other. I put about 3 layers of pigment from the pencils down, and then I began to blend. The pen is an alcohol-based solvent, and I was actually really surprised at how well it blended the colored pencil. The lower layers were very smooth, and I actually like it better than using OMS for the early layers. The amount of solvent that comes out on the pen is always the same amount. You don't have to worry about, do I have too much, do I have too little? I didn't see any bleed, which is very nice. And I like the fact that it does have the dual tips. So you have the brush tip, which is, for thicker, and then you have the bullet tip for the thinner, more narrow spaces, which I was able to judge very easily with this because the stems are very thin, and then I could use the bold tip, is what they're calling it, on the actual cherry. The OMS, I use the brush, and you don't have as much control over the amount that you always use. Even though you dab it on a paper towel, there might be a little bit more, a little bit less. So efficiency, I think the pen's a little bit more efficient on the earlier layers. Once I layered more pencil on, I did find that the OMS was easier to control than the pen blender. The pen blender tended to want to move the pigment away, leaving almost not really bare areas, but you could tell that the pigment was moving away from the area that you were working on. To where if you use the OMS and a brush, you can control it. If you find that it's moving away, you just wipe off the excess and go back to your piece. So I find that the pen works quite well on the earlier layers, to where OMS works better on the subsequent layers. Now, I was also curious about using alcohol with the pencils, or actually any solvent with pencils. I really haven't done a lot of research, and I've always been curious as to, does alcohol actually affect the light fastness of pencils? So the answer is actually very difficult to find, but I did end up finding a couple of responses. A couple of artists contacted a few of the pencil brands, and what I found out was, regardless of the type of solvent you use, whether it's alcohol or whether it's OMS or some other solvent, on a molecular level, it doesn't actually change the light fast ratings. The reason it would fade quicker is because the solvent actually dissolved the binders, and you have a thinner layer of pencil in that area. So molecularly, it does not change the light fastness. However, because you basically thin down the pigment to spread it out and blend it, it does affect the light fastness in that fact. So their recommendation is, if you do use a solvent, to put more pencil on top, and then the solvent is no longer as the top layer, and you have a full layer of pigment on the piece. So therefore, the light fast ratings actually come back into play to the original rating of that pencil. pencil. I found this really interesting and hope that you guys found that interesting as well. Overall, the final outcome was pretty similar. I only used the alcohol based on the left and only used OMS on the right. I did not combine the two. I think that they could be used in combination with each other. It's not going to cause a problem. I can definitely see how certain things can be made easier by using the pen versus OMS. Great for traveling. You don't have to worry about leakage. I do not know how long it actually lasts. Like, if you're doing a large piece, will one pen get you through an entire piece? Maybe I can do a test and see how long it actually lasts. I would also like to see it be refillable. That being said, knowing it is alcohol based, you can also use colorless blenders from the alcohol markers such as Prismacolor and Winsor Newton and Copic. Copic has refills. So in the long run, a colorless blender from Copic, even though it seems like it's expensive at first, if you buy the refill, you can get a 250 milliliter refill for $11. Do you know how many times that'll fill up a Copic marker? I mean, crazy amount of time. So really, it's up to personal preference. I will be having a video on how to use an alcohol marker to blend colored pencil coming up soon, but I really wanted to compare the two together. I find that the results are very similar. So really, it's personal preference. How do you like to work? Do you like to work with the pen, or do you like to work with OMS? It has no negative impact on light fastness, regardless of whether you use the alcohol base or the odorless mineral spirits, Gamsol, any of that, except for the fact that it does thin out the pigment, so therefore it would fade without an additional layer of pencil. So I hope you like this comparison of using a blending pen versus OMS. And if you did, give the video a big thumbs up and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on any future comparisons, tutorials, or live streams. Until next time, keep on arting. Bye!